Check one. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Crush Live Call-Ins. I'm your host here, Bart Hanson, and it's Monday at 4:45 p.m. Pacific Time, 7:45 Eastern. That's when we do this show every single week, and as you can see, I'm a little bit mobile here. I am at the bike. I am going to be playing on Live at the Bike tomorrow. I'm in the bike hotel. My wife and I have staying here for 5 or 6 days. I played on the game on Thursday, putting in a chunk of hours in the 5-5 game at the bike for my challenge. At the end of the show, I think that I'm going to actually go over a hand that I played yesterday, which I thought was quite interesting against a fishy player. So definitely stick around for that. And of course, this live stream is going to go on unlisted after the fact. It's not going to go up public. So if you want to watch the whole thing, subscribe to the channel and also turn email notifications on so that you can get a link to this live stream if you want to have it. And of course, it's up on a podcast on crushlabpoker.com. And if you ever want to be on the show, you need to pre-submit. Send me an email, bart@crushlabpoker.com, bart@crushlabpoker.com, or if you are a CLP subscriber, of course, you can hit me up on Discord. So we've got a bunch of calls here. Somebody was asking me about a tournament in the live chat, and what I actually realized is that, because I've had a big year in tournaments, which is going to be kind of a discount for me. I realized I was talking to Aaron on Live at the Bike on Thursday. I'm going to be in Vegas for the 5 Diamond, which is the biggest 10K of the year. So I think I'm going to play that for sure. The 5 Diamond in Vegas sort of culminates the year. But let's get into our first call here on this Monday, midway through November. And let's go to the first call here. And this is in the 812. You are up first, sir.
Hey, Bart, how you doing?
Good. How's it going?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad. I got
Awesome.
a 1-2 hand for you.
Okay.
Kind of got myself in a weird spot, so I wanted to talk through it with you, see what
Sure.
you think.
Sure. So 1-2. Where's this played out of?
Horseshoe, Southern Indiana.
Horseshoe, Southern Indiana. 1-2 no limit. Okay.
It's a 1 to 300 buy-in, but you can buy in for half of the big stack. So I actually have 350 to start the hand, and I cover all the villains.
Okay.
So it starts out. There's an under the gun limper.
Okay.
Under the gun +1 also limps, and then I'm next to act with Jack of Spades, Jack of Hearts, and
Okay.
I raise it to 17.
Okay.
Folds all the way to the small blind, who's a real short stack. She only has like $50 to start the hand, and she cold calls the 17.
Okay.
And then both limpers call.
So small blind who starts with like $50, cold calls a 17.
Yep.
And both limpers call.
Yep. So
Okay.
it's about a $70 pot 4 ways.
Okay.
Flop comes up 9, 8, 3. 9 and 8 are diamonds. The 3 is a heart.
So 9, 8, 3, 2 diamonds. You've got jacks, no diamonds. So you have an overpair here. And at
Yep.
this level, I'm usually just shoveling money in pretty much with overpairs. I mean, you can get into situations where, some crazy shit can happen, but I'm not really too concerned about how people's range might have more low cards than you if you're raising from up front like we might at the higher stakes. That's not a huge consideration at these levels because people are calling way too wide. So does it
Right.
get checked to you?
Actually, no. So it gets weird right away. The small blind donks out for $12.
Okay.
Both the limpers call the $12.
Okay.
So just like you said, I felt like I was way ahead.
Sure.
She could be donking out with anything, a 9, any sort of draw. And when they called, I kind of put them on draws too. So I decided to raise here, and I made it 75. What do you think?
Think it's fine. It's like a 6x raise here. What if you really, really see? You can't depend on. I was gonna say if you really, really want to. Actually, it doesn't really matter. I was thinking about possibly doing something tricky where you make a small raise so that small blind shoves and then kind of it opens the raising back up. Like if the people in between call, you can make it like 25 call, and then if they call, you can just move over the top all in. But there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. I'm fine with your raise. So you make it 75, yep.
Yep, and then kind of as expected, the small blind goes all in for her remainder. And then both the limpers call the raise.
Wow. So you just put in like 225, like 275 on the flop. So the pot is like what, like 350 or something? 345?
Yeah. I called it it's about 320. So there's like a $120 there's like a $120 side pot and then a $200 main pot.
Okay, so 120 on the side, 200 in the main. And these guys, these guys only have these guys have got like maybe 230 to 250 left, something like that in their stack.
Yeah, so they both started with a little over 200. So the under the gun had like 250 and the +1 had about 220.
Okay. That's how much they have left.
Um,
Or they started
oh,
with that.
sorry, that's what they started with.
Oh, so they're they only have like 100 left, right? Something like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So this, it kind of, I'll be honest, that kind of threw me off a little bit. I didn't expect them both to call.
Uh-huh.
So we get to the turn, and it's the king of spades.
Okay.
So they checked me again,
Uh-huh.
and this is where my next question comes in. Um, I wasn't sure what to make of that because obviously it's kind of a brick in that it doesn't really complete any of the obvious draws, so
Right.
it's not a diamond. Um, but then also it is an overcard, and my first thought was, I mean, either one of these guys could have like a king X of diamonds
Yeah, but the thing is
type
that
hand potentially.
I mean, here's the thing. So if we're just looking at
Yeah,
this, putting it back, I mean, it's actually 250 effective, right? Because the effective stack is the shorter
yeah,
stack. These
right.
guys are going to have like 125 to 150 left. The pot's already
Hmm.
325, and you've got money in the main. I mean, you only have like a third. You just go all in now. I mean, if someone's got
Okay,
king nine or
okay,
someone's got a king X of diamonds, I mean, what are you going to do? You know what I mean?
okay.
I don't think I'm really checking back this turn. I don't think I'm checking back many, if any, turns with the exception of a diamond. Like even if a
Okay.
nine were to come, it doesn't really look like some of these guys. It doesn't seem like these guys have a nine.
Hmm.
I think I'd probably shove on a nine too, to be honest with you, or an
Okay.
eight. There's just not many cards I'm not gonna shove on here.
Okay.
You
All
know what I
right.
mean? So so when
Gotcha.
check to you.
Yeah, and I ended up checking, but in
Yeah.
in in hindsight, I totally agree with you. Looking back on it, I really thought I should have just shoved it in there.
Uh huh.
Um, so it checked through.
Yep.
And then the river is the 10 of hearts.
The river's the ten of hearts. Okay, so it's nine
Hmm.
of diamonds, eight of diamonds, three of hearts, king of spades, ten of hearts. You raise the
Yep.
flop with jacks. The small blind goes all in. Lead like donk small, call, you raise, call, they both call, turns the king of spades, check, check, check.
Hmm.
River's the 10 of
Yep.
hearts, okay? I mean, I don't know
Yep.
what's going to happen here, but at this point, if
Hmm.
it got checked to you, I would probably check back here, right? Because, I mean, you are
Hmm.
dealing with money on the side. There is some money on the side, but this sort of like people aren't going to call as much when you know they're just not going to
Hmm.
call down as light because you already have somebody that's all in, right? Like they can't
Right.
bluff catch you. So if it got checked, I would definitely check it back. But I don't think that happened, right?
No, so the under the gun checked, but then the under the gun +1, he shoved for about it was about 115.
Shoves for 115, and now it's on to you, and
Yeah,
now it's over to you. So the pot's like
correct.
430,
Hmm.
115 for you to call. I gotta be honest with you.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
even though I don't make like a lot of big laydowns at this level,
Right.
with the
Hmm.
nature of this pot, because the pot you can definitely overfold in these spots because
Hmm.
the pot's protected by the all-in player. Like this guy just doesn't
Hmm.
isn't gonna have a bluff here. Unless he's totally clueless, which you will run into at 1-2, but I don't see him
Right.
punting off the rest of his stack when somebody's already all in. I think you can
Hmm.
easily overfold the spot. I think I would fold here. If you check back the
Okay.
turn, I think I'd fold rather comfortably. Because what is he
Okay.
betting here at the end? There's going to be just a lot of two pair, a lot of straights.
Right.
Um, you know, plus you have to beat the person, obviously, who is all in for the main pot. I
Yep.
think I just fold. What ended up happening?
Okay. I ended up calling. I kind of convinced myself that he could have some busted flush draws or something that he was maybe trying to shove me off with.
Yeah, but why would
But
he do that though when the main pot is protected? That's the thing. That's what we're
ru-
dealing with here, right?
yeah, and that makes sense. Which that's something I didn't think about in
Yeah,
in game.
yeah.
But that makes a lot of sense. But I ended up calling.
Uh,
The other guy folded, and the guy who shoved showed 7-6 of hearts, so
okay.
he made the straight on the river.
Yep. 7-6 of hearts, so he had an open end straight draw, backdoor flush draw. You gave him a free
Hmm.
card on the turn. And then did you ever
Right.
see what the all in player had from the small blind?
No, she just mucked her hand and then left, so I never saw what she had.
So you just got caught up a little bit on the turn, basically. I just think that
Yeah.
what this hand shows is that when you have a stack to pot ratio of like less than half, and you
Hmm.
get a blank, yeah, I mean, sometimes you're gonna run into some variance, and someone might have king X, and sometimes you're gonna lose. But
Mhm.
Yeah, I would definitely put it in. And I'm assuming that you probably would have got the guy to fold. I think with
Right.
7-6 when a king comes with one card to come, right?
Yeah, that was going to be my other quick question for you.
Yeah.
I've been listening to some of your podcasts, and you listened to one recently actually about you talk about turn value.
Uh huh.
Um, would this apply here? Like, I feel like either a, I'm denying all of his equity if I just go ahead and shove,
Well,
or if he decides to call, I'm getting the value from the draw.
that's exactly what it is, right? I mean, listen, like
Yeah.
if these guys only have 1/3 of a pot size bet left, right? They're almost priced in the call with a flush draw, anyways. But
Okay.
you want them to make incorrect calls, and you certainly do want to basically have them fold out their equity as
Hmm.
well. And these guys both look like they have some sort of draws. So I appreciate the call. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Bart. Thank you.
All right, let's go to our next caller here. Again, if you guys want to be on this call-in show, you can pre-submit. You can email me, Bart at crushlivepoker.com. Let's go to the 434 area. You are up next, sir.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Who's this?
Hey, how you doing, Bart?
Good.
This is Watsonator.
Oh, hey, man. What's going on?
Not too much. Just got back this morning from the DC Maryland trip.
Okay, so this is a hand from Maryland Live, right?
It is, and it's going to be a three-bet pot. It was one of the few actually three-bet pots this weekend I was in. It's very rare at the low stakes still, so I figured I want to get more comfortable in those. So I'm bringing in a hand to you here from 1-3 there.
Okay, so 1-3. What's the buy-in structure here?
400 max. This is a new table, so effective stacks are 400.
Okay.
Full ring here.
Yep.
Hero is in the small blind.
Okay.
Sorry. Hero's in the hijack. Villain's in the small blind.
Okay.
All right. So starts out we have an under the gun limp. Under the gun +1 also limps. Even though it's new to the table, I've already seen that this guy's been like in every hand. Just playing every hand, very spewy. It looks like a few people at the table know him and are kind of following him around actually.
Okay.
I'm in the hijack with 8-10 of hearts.
Okay.
Ace 10 of hearts, sorry. And I raised to 18.
Okay. So two limps, you make it 18 with ace 10 of hearts from the hijack.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The small blind, who is a middle-aged white guy, he looks, just kind of has the appearance of being sort of an aggressive kind of guy who looks like he'll, play back at you. He three bets to 60.
Okay.
All right, so it big blind folds, under the gun limper folds, and the under the gun +1 limper, the kind of spewy older guy, he limp calls the three bet for 57 more.
Okay. So he limp calls, which is something that limp call. So limp, you make it 18 to 60. This guy limp calls. So I mean, at this point there's already like $140 in dead money. Obviously, listen, like you don't see like you had just said, you don't see like a whole lot of three betting sort of light here at these levels. I mean, the theoretical concept here is that you could possibly just shove this hand, to be honest with you, and it probably wouldn't even be like that big of a deal because you might get like ace queens and some pairs and stuff to fold. But if people aren't three betting with the that robust of a range, and also too, like it's not like it's like you're raising over two people and he's three betting, he really should be strong. But whenever you have somebody who basically cold calls a three bet, or in this case limp calls a three bet, you've got so much dead money out there. If there's ever a hint of fold equity, it's probably not even that bad of a play to shove.
Gotcha.
But if you don't want to do that, I mean, obviously calling is fine here too, but I think that you have to call. I mean, you've got ace 10 suited, right? I mean, you're going to be getting laid like, it's only 40 more for, like 140.
Right. And I didn't end up making the call, but I was just thinking a little bit more about this spot. It's kind of weird to sort of kind of hedge the pot odds versus this multi-way action. It's like, yeah, you're getting a great price, but when does, the amount of players kind of like, oh, well, there's more players here, I need to watch out. It's multi-way pot. But obviously the more players, you also get better pot odds, so it's kind of an odd spot sometimes. I've kind of been playing around with that spot.
Well, you don't really want to make calls with like king jack offsuit and things like that. And the shorter the stacks, the less sort of suitedness matters. But high card value, ace 10 suited is a good one. But
Right.
if you had like
Okay.
5 6, I mean 5 6 is kind of special too. But like just some of the suited connectors, you just kind of want to make more of a top pair when you're sort of shallower. But you might actually want to start this hand off by raising a little bit more. I don't know what the straight raise size was too. If it was to
Yeah.
15,
Yeah.
I mean, I might make this like 20 to 20. I might make this $25 right off the top. But okay, so
Yeah. I probably should have. I generally had been opening around 10 or 12. Saw a couple limpers, so I just went a little more. But I probably, yeah, could have gone maybe like 20, 25 for sure.
so you make the call. So the pot's like 185, something like that, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And
Yep.
we all have around 340 left in our stack. So yeah, make the call. Flop comes out. Ace of spades, eight of diamonds, five of hearts.
Ace of spades, five of dime. Ace of spades, eight of diamonds, five of hearts, and you have ace 10 of hearts, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Pot's around 180.
Yep.
And it actually checks around. It goes check, check, check for us three. Now, I think in the moment I kind of got, I was kind of happy that it checked to me, and I kind of just went on an auto check, just kind of checked to see what happened, and thinking I could definitely put in a bet here, more often than not.
I would probably start betting here. I mean, just one. I mean, one little
Okay.
quick thing here too is again, you have a backdoor heart draw, so it's a little bit better, but it's very rare to see somebody three bet with ace king ace queen, and I feel like check this board all that much.
Yeah.
I just think
Yeah.
that this guy's gonna have a lot of like pairs, maybe like tens,
Hmm.
jacks, queens, kings, and you don't have to bet large. You can bet like 60 to 65. I think I would probably default get my value early on as opposed to check back. I mean, checking back's not that bad. You can probably get
Right.
some money in, but I would probably still default to bet kind of small, like maybe like $60, something like that.
Okay.
Because if you were to bet 60 here and the small blind called and the pot, and let's say the limper folds, right, and the pot's going to be 300 and you've got like 300 left and the turn was like a brick, right, like a deuce, and
Hmm.
say you considered this like a two street hand, even if you checked back turn, if he checks the river, you can basically jam, like your hand's good. But you do have to, I mean, you can
Right.
look at a two street hand, I guess, by checking back flop and then going bet on turn river. But I would normally start a bet here. But okay, you check.
Okay. Yeah. So
No.
I end up checking, and the turn is the five of clubs, so it pairs the board,
Okay.
full rainbow.
Yep.
And now the initial three better, small blind, he bets out 60 into the 180 pot. And he seems pretty happy about that. Obviously, I don't put him on a five. Obviously, he doesn't put me on a five. Unless, it's something like ace five, but I probably would have started betting that already. And the under the gun one tank, he kind of tank folds. He was pulling out some chips. I was actually kind of wondering what he was going to do, but he does end up making the fold after a little while.
Okay.
And I end up just making the call here.
Right. So 60 and a call. So now the pot's 300.
Yes.
Okay.
We have about a little less than a pot size left in our stack.
Yep.
And the river comes off the ace of diamonds.
Let me ask you a question here.
And,
So I just want to, before we get to the end,
yeah, yeah.
the board's entirely rainbow here on the turn. Ace of spades, eight of diamonds,
Mm-hmm,
five of hearts,
mm-hmm.
five of clubs. It actually works to your favor if it puts like a backdoor flush draw out there, because then it sort of lends itself to, if your opponent checks on a brick, you look like you have basically you could have like a busted flush draw. In this rainbow scenario, let's say the river is like a deuce, okay, something like that, and your opponent
Mm-hmm.
checks. What were you planning on doing? So it's ace 8 5 5, right? Now instead of the river being an ace, let's say the river's a deuce.
Yeah,
What were you gonna do?
I would have bet. And I think in the past I would not have. However, I've been working on kind of betting a little bit thinner.
Uh-huh.
And I think just, I think if the villain does have me kicked here, it's just one of those spots where, if I value on myself, then so be it. It's one of those spots, I think, where I have to bet at this level.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you. Like I said, I think that it's a slam dunk bet if the backdoor flush draw comes in here on the turn and then it gets
Mm-hmm.
checked on a brick river. Um, you know, on a total rainbow board and he checks, you're going to value own yourself some of the time. But I think this is really,
Yeah.
again, imagining the river's a deuce is a really good example of how, okay, yeah, you're going to value own yourself some of the time. You have to value own yourself some of the time if you want to get the proper value at these stakes. So if he's going to
Hmm.
call with like tens through kings, and then sometimes he's going to have like ace jack, ace queen, and check call you, that's fine. Because if you're not
Right.
value owning yourself sometime, you're not value betting enough, right? And that goes back to the concept when talking about value owning. Value owning means you're betting a hand for value that's actually worse than your opponent's and you get called by a better hand. If you're never doing that, that means you're checking back far too much. If you look at someone's sort of like value bet statistic, when they make a bet for value on the river, if they
Hmm.
basically are always good when they're called, then they're doing something wrong. Because
Right.
then they don't have those in between hands, like where they're good 70, 80% of the time, something like that. But anyways, the river's an ace.
Exactly.
The river's an ace. Okay, so it's good for you if the guy checks because it's obviously less likely that you have an ace, right? The problem here is that
Exactly.
you don't have a whole lot of bluffs getting here. You know what I mean? Like it's like what bluffs do you
True.
have when he checks? I mean, like 6-7. That's why I like the if there was a backdoor or something like that. Did the villain check now?
He does end up checking, and
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping he had a very high, pocket pair and saw the ace and thought, well, that's much less likely I have an ace. Don't know if he's really thinking on that level, but he did seem, somewhat competent. So I did like the ace, and obviously since I have an ace, I don't really put him on an ace, and he's checking, so I don't think I'm gonna ever be chopping here or anything. So he checks it. I meant to just grab 3 greens and throw out 75. It
Hmm.
actually ended up only being 2, so I bet 50.
Okay.
Just to try to get something. I don't know if this is just so small that it's never a bluff here. Maybe I should go a little more than that.
No, I actually don't. I just think that I don't mind your sizing. I probably would bet 75 here, but it's so hard for
Yeah,
you to have bluffs here the way that this hand is played
yeah,
out. I mean, whether you have a 5 or an ace, it's just really hard. I mean, you're going to have a lot of aces here too. People will
right.
check back weak aces. So I don't hate the bet. I would probably bet 75. So you bet 50.
Yep, yep. And he kind of sits there a little while and he kind of mumbles to himself and he ends up tank folding and I win the pot. But I'm assuming if he had like kings or queens, he would have made the call or at least showed me. So I don't think he had that. He probably ended up just having maybe like I don't know. I'm guessing maybe like tens or nines or something. That's kind of just a guess. But um,
Yeah, but
yeah, I end up
I
just
mean,
taking the pot
would
there.
he? What's the difference between having like tens or nines and like kings or queens here, though? You're not value betting something
True,
in
true. Yeah,
between.
that's true. Yeah, you're right. Unless he puts me on a higher pocket pair. But
I
you're
mean, I
right.
think that this just goes to
Absolutely.
show. I mean, I think this goes to show though too that like most people are gonna call with nines through kings here, and he probably didn't even have anything, which lends itself
You're right.
even
Yeah.
more to even four betting with ace ten of hearts, which kind of goes back
Yep.
to it. But I appreciate the call. Thank you very much. Let's go to our next caller here, and this is going to be a higher stakes hand. This is Nick. I met Nick at the bike. He was playing some 10, 20, 40 in the back. What's going on, Nick? The back at the bike, this private room.
Hey, so actually we kicked up the game to 25, 50, 100 by the end, but
Okay.
uh, but yeah, so I was at the Gardens Casino, formerly known as Hawaiian Gardens in Orange County the other day, and I played in a game that when I got there was 5, 10, 20. I think it started at 5, 10,
Hmm.
and by the end of the game we managed to kick it up to 20, 40, 80.
Is that
And
so?
that's how you know that
So you
Southern
were playing 20?
California is a degenerate place.
So you're playing 20, 40, 80 in this hand, right? Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And how deep are you?
So I started with a little north of 4K, maybe
Okay.
like 4.1, 4.2, something like that.
So pretty short
Because it
for
was
the
initially, but it was initially a 5, 10, 20 game.
right. Got
So,
it.
and I think it may have even been 5, 10 before I got there. So anyway, um, it was a 3 blind configuration. I'm in the cutoff, and I opened up with 5, 7 of clubs.
And it's a full table.
It's a full table.
So what was your sizing here?
So I opened up to 260 on the cutoff. I just figured you have to go a little bit bigger when you have 3 blinds versus 2 blinds, like in terms of sizing versus the big.
Yeah.
What do you call it? The super big blind, second big blind,
Well, I mean the big blind and then the third blind or the straddle. I actually think that
third blind. Okay.
you're probably too short. I think I'd probably just fold your hand pre-flop to be honest with you at the stack depth because you're only about 50 big blinds. I mean, from the button, maybe you open it, but from the cutoff, I think it's probably a little bit too loose. Even literally, almost even any suited connector, it's just you can never really call three bet because it's going to be such a huge portion of your stack. So when you get more shallow, when you're playing like 50 big blinds or less, the offsuit high card hands go up in value, and you'd want to prefer like raising like king 10 or like ace 9 off than something like 5 6 7 of clubs. I mean, I realize you weren't expecting to be this short, but sort of the hand values, that's how it's played out.
So either add on chips or just like
play super. Yeah, you gotta play tight and you gotta play high cards. Yeah, but okay, so you raised to 260 with
that makes sense.
Yeah, you raised. You raised to 260 with 5 7 of clubs. Okay.
Yep, and then the small blind is a very solid professional player named Blake.
Mm-hmm.
He 3-bet to 800, and then the rest of the blinds like snap folded.
Yep.
And it went back to me, and I was honestly not sure what to do in this spot. I mean, I think that he doesn't necessarily have to have like queens plus when he does this. I think he can definitely have hands like jack 10 suited or maybe even ace jack, ace queen, stuff like that I'm not necessarily in terrible shape against. Obviously, he will also have premiums, and I'm not necessarily going to hit every flop super hard. So if I miss, I'm definitely going to have to plan on bluffing at a fairly high frequency. But fortunately for me, I decided to be a degenerate and make the call.
Well, so here's the thing. So here's the thing before we move on. I mean, again, like if you were deeper here, this would really be on the cusp of a call. I mean, 5 7 of clubs, the direct suited connectors work actually exponentially better than a gap suited connector. At 50 big blinds, I think that this is just a simple fold. If you were 8K effective, it's probably very, very close. Probably on the button is probably 5 7 of clubs might be called. It might even be as high. The cutoff in terms of like if you were really looking at optimal rangers might be like 7 9 8 10 suited plus 7 9 suited plus. It still might even be too wide. Button versus cutoff here. You're just in the problem with having short stack is it's just going to be so hard for you to realize. And I'm going to be honest with you.
I really need like a jack 10 suited, a 9 10 suited, that sort of hand.
Yeah. You need some cards where you can just hold on with top pair. I mean, it's all about making top pair at a shallow stack depth like this, and that's reflected in tournament play too. If you ever play in tournaments, like this hand doesn't have much value in a tournament. When you
makes sense.
Yeah, when you get that, it's just I would rather like open king jack off and call and get it in on a king or a jack high board. But okay, you make the call.
So if you open king, but real quick, if you open king jack or like ace 10 or something like that, if you're facing a 3-bet in this configuration, would you be looking to continue?
I mean, if he's 3-betting to this sizing here, and you're only playing 50 blinds, I don't think it's probably even that bad just to play an all-in or fold.
That makes sense.
That short with the 3 blinds. I mean, there probably are some calls. I'm not exactly sure what they would necessarily be off the top of my head, but yeah, it definitely gets a little bit weird when you're short. But okay, so you make the call and your head's up, right?
Yeah, so the flop, gin flop, 7-7 queen. So basically I lose to queens, and otherwise I'm good.
7-7 queen rainbow?
7-7 queen rainbow.
Okay.
And I checked to him, which I think I'm supposed to do with my whole range.
Well, wait a minute. So I remember you told me this hand, but you just said that you were in the cutoff and he was in the small blind. So something's off here.
Sorry. I misstated that. I'm on the cutoff and he's on the button.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm so sorry. I misstated that.
So that's even more of a fold because now you're out of position. Too.
I'm out of position.
Yeah. Even more of a fold. You're out of position. This makes a big difference. But anyways, all right. So you flop trips. Okay.
Sorry for misstating that. I just wasn't thinking clearly.
Yeah.
I flop trips. I check to him. He bets 1100. I call, and on the turn, which is a jack, I led for the rest, which was like 2,400 or something like that.
So the reason why I think that this is kind of interesting, and you came over and talked to me about it on when I was playing 5-5 and you were playing in the back at the bike, is that you said that they know you're a recreational player, right? Pretty much, right? Like, I mean, it's going to be the same amount of there's going to be the same amount of players basically in that regular player pool. So you're a recreational player. The game
I mean, I called $800 with 5/7 season. Of course, I'm a recreational player.
What I would say is that, and if any of the listeners are out there in this similar type of situation, so first of all, we know you're too shallow to call from out of position. It's very hard to screw this hand up because of the fact that the money's going to get all in, except possibly the way that you played it. You could have possibly screwed it up, and I want to go over what I was thinking about here is that I might actually take a really, really non-standard line if I'm a recreational player, quote unquote, and playing at this stack depth. I might do one of two things. I might min check raise the flop and then check the turn, or I might check call the flop and just bet really, really small on the turn. Because the problem with
Like
moving
500 or something.
well, when he bets 1100 and you call, the pot's going to be 22. It's like 3800, and you've got like 2000 left. Like you could bet like 500. Yeah, you could bet like 500. Because if you move all in here and he just has like ace king, ace 10, I mean, it's probably going to be pretty close. He's going to be getting 3-1, but you don't want him to fold out like his bluffs if he has like ace 5 or something like that, and he was going to bluff you on the turn. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, okay. So you're saying like if you bet small in the turn, he's going to be continuing with hands like ace 10 and ace king, and then you'll rip the river.
Well, you just don't
fold anyway.
You don't. I think that here's the thing: if you move all in, right, he's just going to fold out his bluffs. And if you bet tiny or you check to him, he very well might continue with bluffs like an ace king or an ace 10 hand that pick up equity. Or if you do some sort of crazy unorthodox like bet tiny, he might think that you're sort of finding out where you're at with a pocket pair, and you might fold with like pocket 6s or pocket 8s. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, obviously you're going to get a call here if he has like aces or kings, but you don't want him to fold like ace king or ace 10. That's a disaster. You know what I mean?
Right.
So what ended up happening?
Really great point.
What ended up happening?
Well, so he snapped, and I was good on a 9 river.
So obviously he did have a hand. I mean, obviously he's going to have like a queen here.
Yeah, so that's what I was wondering.
Most
what do
likely.
you think his 3-betting range pre looks like in that configuration?
Well, I mean, at 50 big blinds, he's not supposed to have some of the more, like, if you open a 260, his hands sort of condense down to sort of what a tournament 3-betting range here is in this spot, which is like a king jack off, king 10 off. Those hands are going to be much more reflective of a 3-bet than like 5-6 suited, something like that. A blocker hand, even like in ace 6, if he's going to size and 3-bet with a blocker and then fold to your shove, it's all pretty non-standard for cash games because it's so shallow. So he's going to be very sort of, I would say, somewhat I don't know if I would say necessarily polar. I think polar in the sense that he's going to have a lot of premiums that he's going to go with, and then some blocker type hands that might have some playability post to get in top pair, and
so
will
won't
fold
have like
to your
9,
jam.
10, but he might have like ace 5 suited.
Yeah, I think so. Ace X, things like that, high cards. I think things like that at that at that spot, but. I mean, it's good that you got a call, but you see what I'm talking about, that the line doesn't make it's hard to screw the hand up, except you're giving him a chance to maybe even fold off his bluffs when you play it like this, right? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I botched the hand and just got extraordinarily lucky, to be honest with you.
Oh, no worries. I appreciate. Yeah, no, I appreciate you introducing yourself and you coming over and calling in. And the next caller actually is going to be a guy that was playing in your game too, as well. Thanks for the call, Nick. I appreciate it. Squish my tomato. What up?
What game?
That guy was in your game at the bike.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think he might have looked to you like a Euro, but obviously he's not a Euro. I think he might have been wearing a plaid shirt. But you were playing at the bike, right? And what was the game size? This was on Friday night, is that right?
Saturday, it was $10.25 at the $25 ante.
$10.25, so just 2 blinds with a 25 big blind ante?
Or $10.25.
Oh, $10.25
ante.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, so the bike, So the villain in the hand, of course, is going to be in this particular hand is Ryan Feldman, who is sort of who used to be a part of Put the Games Down on Live the Bike, and he now sort of hosts these games, mostly like in that sort of private room. It's good that I've always talked about this. It's really good that these live games I feel like are going in this direction. I mean, I don't know if it's ever going to be in terms of this blind and the ante structure. I don't know if it's ever going to really be like this at 5-5, but a 3 blind game with an ante is just so much superior than like a 2 blind game with no ante, right? I mean, it's just much better game.
It's so good.
Yeah, yeah.
It's I can't play 2 blind poker. It's the worst.
Really?
Well, I mean, I guess I can play it. I just hate playing it.
Well, I've played a bunch of 5-5. That's part of me being here at the bike, and we're probably going to end the show with a hand that I played because I think it's interesting. And I texted you it earlier, Squish, but it's interesting about like how to maximize against a fish. But all right, let's get into this hand. So how deep are you guys?
This is about 11K effective, or no, 12K effective with Ryan.
Okay.
So Ryan opens under the gun to 100. I look down at red aces, and I 3-bet under the gun 1, 2, 3, 25.
Ace of diamonds, ace of hearts, 325. Is this a full ring game, by the way?
Yeah, this is 8-handed at the time.
Okay, 8-handed.
So,
yeah.
Definitely not the guy in the plaid shirt. This is a guy wearing like all leather, who I have pegged as kind of like I've seen him do some things that are like not good.
Okay.
So I have him pegged as kind of like a bad reg, or like, maybe like, probably like a bad reg, from the small blind cold calls.
Okay.
And he starts the hand with about 6K. And then Ryan calls as well, so we're 3-handed.
So small blind, 6K, cold calls. That's never really going to be a good thing. Cold calls, and then UTG calls as well. Now, I did make a pretty exploitative flat call in the Barry game on Thursday, where I actually cold called 3-bet with 4-5 suited on the button. But that's a very, very special circumstance where it's a huge deviation where you think that the original raiser is not going to have a whole lot of 4-bets. And obviously I had position. I also thought that the 3-better was extremely tight. This was Lena, who was playing like 22% VPIP. I thought she was extremely tight because Turbo had opened from up front and she had 3-bet in mid position. And I thought we were deep enough for me to make that call. And I didn't think Turbo was going to 4-bet. Here, we know that Ryan can 4-bet all kinds of shit here, right? You know what I mean? Like, if he's got like ace-4 suited, he's probably going to hop on that, don't you think, Squish? So it's a pretty bad spot to cold call 3-bets here in this scenario from the small blind.
Especially under the gun versus under the gun 1.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
So pot's like 1,000, right?
Yeah, pot's about 1,000.
Yeah.
Flop comes 9, 9, 3 deuce with 2 hearts.
All right, nine of hearts, 8 of hearts, deuce.
9, 3 deuce.
9-3. Oh, 9-3 deuce. All right, so 9 of hearts, 3 of hearts, deuce of clubs. I'll put it up. Okay, so and you've got red ace. So you've got aces with the ace of hearts, right?
Yeah. Red aces.
Yeah.
So Ryan checks. I bet 300.
So small blind checks. Ryan checks.
Yeah, I bet 300. Small blind calls. Now Ryan also calls.
Okay. What about the sizing here? Like, what did you I mean, I feel like, yes, it's a multi-way pot, but I know that some of the stuff that we've done with top section and, No Limit continues to always evolve, and now some of the really good players are, there's different size. You're not always default betting like 1/3. I know that this is it's a multi-handed spot here, but I do feel like, especially when you've got aces, which kind of cuts down on your opponents having some ace highs, right, that they're going to call with. I might, on the surface, it looks like I might size up here because I don't think that Ryan or the small blind, if they're calling, especially the small blind, if cold calling with like pairs, is going to fold if he's that bad where he's cold calling the small blind. I don't know. I mean, did you think about sizing up here?
I did, and I thought this would be a board I'd probably take a pretty large sizing. But just multi-way, I decided to go smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, and this is kind of like backwards of optimal play, but I think I may take a large sizing here without having the ace of hearts. And I know it's like in optimal play, it's the other way around, but like I'm just like I don't see people like ever check raising me off my equity. Like I don't see people ever check raising as a bluff without just having 3-bet pots live.
Yeah.
So like that was my thought. Like I can kind of call a check raise with red aces with the heart, but yeah. So I for smaller sizing.
So you bet 300, small blind and Ryan call, so the pot now is 1900, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And we go to the turn. The turn is what I think is a pretty big blank. It's a 7, an offsuit 7, doesn't bring a backdoor flush draw.
Okay.
And both check to me again, and I bet 1,000.
So you bet half the size of the pot.
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of tough for us in these, when you put, like, if you're trying to play close to equilibrium here, these are really difficult situations to study because equilibrium solvers don't really do multi-way unless you get into Munker, which is a whole nother thing that I'm not super familiar with. But normally, if you were heads up here, you probably get to overbet this turn a lot, right? In a 3-bet pot, a non-connecting turn card like the 7 of spades here. Like, I wouldn't think it would be half pot, but I don't mind your bet. Like, it's sort of an exploitable. I like a half pot sizing some of the time just to get max value, like where a solver might go like pot. Like, you're just sort of going like half pot, 2/3 on clean runouts and things like that because you're trying to get like this small blind to call with like jacks or some bullshit. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I felt like if I just went like 3/4 pot here with him having Ryan behind him, he may make like a hero fold with like 10s or something.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I don't want that to happen.
Right.
So I bet 1,000. Blind actually folds pretty quickly, and Ryan calls again.
So small blind folds, UTG calls. And now the pot's like 3,900, right? As we go to the river. Okay, river.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the river is an offsuit 8.
An offsuit 8. So
yeah,
I'm going to put the final board as 9 of hearts, 3 of hearts, deuce of clubs, 7 of spades, 8 of spades. So 9, 3, deuce, 7, 8. Front door hearts brick out. You have the ace of hearts in your hand. You bet 1/3 on the flop, call, turns a 7 of spades. You bet half the pot-ish on the turn. Small blind, who's next to act, folds. Ryan calls from under the gun, closing the action. 3,900. River is the 8 of spades. Let me ask you before you tell us what happens here. If Ryan checks here, what are you doing?
I think this is actually a check back. I just like I think like so many of his hand. This is like a pretty bad card for me. I think. I mean, I guess we can still get value from like 10s and jacks. Maybe I think like he's 4-betting queens all the time.
Well, I think that's the critical inflection point here, and I tend to agree with you. I think it's pretty close, but I think the critical inflection point here is that if this was heads up, the entire hand was heads up, it would be much more likely to be a bet here. But because if we notice preflop configuration and the small blind flat call, he's so incentivized to 4-bet, he's going to have a much wider 4-bet range, like with queens plus, maybe even sometimes jacks, right? As opposed to if you were heads up, right, under the gun versus under the gun 1, right?
Yeah, so we're pretty much targeting like 10s, like some of his jacks, and like ace 9, which is hard because we have the aces. So like I think it's too thin. So my plan was to check back.
And then and he's going to have some misses, and also too he might even have some hands that he's sort of. It's just hard for him to. Like, even if you were to bet like 2,000, I don't know if he's calling with like 10s. Like, your line looks so strong, you know what I mean? It's just because of the multi-way nature, right, of the pot.
Yeah, for sure.
And he's going to have some slow plays when the small blind basically folds out on turn, right? And then he very well, you used a small sizing on the flop. He might overcall with 8s on the flop and then continue on turn. So, I mean, some of the sets might be represented here, 9, 7, or 8 that would be, so I think it's pretty close. But that didn't happen. What ended up happening here?
he thinks for a bit, and then he leads for 1540.
So he bets 1540, which is into 3900. So it's about, it's under half the size of the pot. It's probably like 40-ish% the size of the pot. So the pot's going to be 54.50, right? 1540 for you to call. So you're getting about 3.5 to 1. And maybe some of the people in the live chat will be surprised by this, but when you texted me this on Saturday right away, I told you right away, I was like, I kind of feel like I would overfold here. When you have the ace of hearts in your hand, I just don't see what bluffs Ryan's going to be making this play with. He's not blocking with tens. He's been definitely shown to have a fair amount of hands that he would defend with here that he sometimes is not supposed to. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if he has like 9-7, 9-8, pocket eights with an overcall on the flop. 5-6, you know what I mean? 5-6 is the gutter that turns a double gutter on turn. I just find it, especially when you have the ace of hearts here, really, really unlikely that this spot is bluffed, even getting 3.5 to 1. Are you good here 1 out of 4.5 times? I don't know. I just, is he gonna make this play here with like queen 10 of hearts here? Like, I don't. It's hard for me to find a bluff here.
Yeah, and you have to search to find bluffs. And meanwhile, like even like Jack 10 of hearts gets there, 5-6 of hearts gets there, 7-8 of hearts. Like all these heart hands like make like a straight or two pair. And I have the ace of hearts, so it's hard to find more than like 2 or 3 bluffs that are heart combos, right?
Right. Yeah,
So,
and I don't think that the hand is played out in a manner where you wouldn't be turning a hand into a bluff here. Like if he had some sort of bluff catcher that he thought was no good, like 9-10 suited, the play would be to check raise the river, right? It wouldn't be to lead, right, with 9-10.
Yeah.
Not for this sizing.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, in game, would I fold here? It kind of sucks, but maybe it's depending on I think it's pretty close. I mean, I think on paper, it's probably, you could probably go either way with it. I think it might be just a tendency type of thing. I think one of the other reasons why I asked you to sort of call in this hand is I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, even though maybe it wasn't necessarily in this hand, but when you're in a game, and this is kind of what Ryan's game is like, a lot of times where there's a lot of rec players, and then there are some good players too, some for-profit players. Do you find that the for-profit players tend to underbluff the other for-profit players some of the time, or they don't necessarily mix it up because it's a lot easy because people are going after the recreational players for the money?
Yeah, I think a lot of them tend to try to stay out of each other's way.
Yeah, that's
I think like especially like the really good players, like pre-flop, like you'll see like flatting like a lot of strong hands too. Like if a good player opens early and like a good player's next. So like yeah, I mean there's a lot of just like.
Is that because they want to keep the bad players in the pot, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So what did you end up doing here?
I folded,
yeah.
And he told me later that night that he had 7-8 of hearts.
7-8 of hearts.
Yeah, so he backdoored 2 pair.
Yep, I mean that makes sense, right? Like it sort of seems like a backdoor type of sizing. So UTG has 7-8 of hearts for 2 pair. Yeah, I mean obviously that's a fold that a lot of people aren't going to necessarily make. With an overpair. Do you think it would have made any difference if you had, like, say, aces without a heart? Does that become a call? Do you think he's finding a bluff with the ace of hearts somehow?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely becomes closer. I thought this one was like a pretty easy fold, like because I couldn't even come up with more than like 2 or 3 bluffs that you could have. Meanwhile, I'm listing off like 7, 8, 9 different value combos. But without the hearts, it's closer, but just like just the sizing, like it's weird to like kind of like what's he trying to get to fold by taking this? It's
right.
Just, like,
that's
weird.
What I mean. Yeah. I mean, some people are saying, could he be blocking with tens or jacks? I don't.
Never.
Tens and jacks.
Never.
I see. You can make block. First of all, I'm not a huge fan of block bets, right? I talk about that, right? Like, I mean, you can sometimes block, I feel like, before the river, and you can use block sizing in position on the turn, right? Instead of checking back, you sort of like, we call it like a reverse block, right? Because then it gets you a showdown at the end instead of like facing some sort of gigantic bet if you check back, on the turn. And you can do that with actually a very wide range and balance of like very strong hands and medium strength hands that want to check back. But there's just no reason to block tens or jacks here on the river, right? Like, it's like, what is the point of doing that? In
Yeah.
order to block the river, you need to get called by a worse hand. So unless like you're gonna call with like ace king of spades here, and are you really structuring the bluff in that way when both people call the flop bet? Are you betting the turn, right, on a 7 when it comes 9-3 deuce turn 7? Like, what are you? And then so you'd have to bet the turn and call the river, putting him like on a busted front door flush draw, like with like an ace king with no heart. That's why a block from up front doesn't make that much sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, my hand looks like missed hearts or an overpair.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you don't block. I mean, you in a spot like this, and in Ryan's spot, you would check, and then, if you are faced with a bet, then you play the hand back in your head. You look at the pot odds, and you figure out whether or not calling or folding is best, or sometimes turning your hand into a bluff, depending on the properties of your hand, is best. But thanks for the call, Squish. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bart.
All right. One more caller, and then we're going to do my hand because I think my hand's cool. So let's go here to the Boston area. And this is 978. You are up, sir.
Hey, Bart. How you doing? It's Paul.
What's going on?
Hey, nothing much. Thanks for taking the call. Got a hand from Chasers up in Salem, New Hampshire that I played a couple nights ago.
I've been there before. Did you say that you met me a few Thanksgivings ago or something like that up at Chasers?
I did. When you were up at Chasers with a couple of your buddies, I sat at a table with you and one of your buddies.
Probably you sat with our buddy Kitterino, Josh. He's a firefighter from Somerville, Mass. But he plays more at Encore now. He says the 2-5 games there are pretty good, but the 5-10 game's not that good. But yeah, Chasers is great. So 2-5 Chasers.
Yeah, I know Josh well. I know Josh is a good guy.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yep, so 2-5 Chasers the other night. It's at the end of the night because they close at 1 there. So we were 7-handed.
Right.
And I was having a really good session. I had 2,100 effective.
This is a 1K cap, 1K cap buy-in, right? If I remember correctly.
800.
800. All right. So 2,100 in hero covers. Okay.
I wake up with pocket eights in the cutoff.
So it gets folded to you.
Yeah. Yep. Gets folded to me.
Okay. And you have.
So I have the 8 of spades, 8 of hearts.
Okay.
And standard open is 20, so I open for 20.
Okay.
And the big blind, the button calls.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a reg that's there every night. And then the big blind called for $20, and I just stacked the big blind over the course of the last couple of hands.
Okay.
And he rebought for the full buy-in.
Okay.
So I got the pocket 8. So the flop comes the 8 of clubs, the 9 of hearts, and the 10 of clubs.
So you flop bottom set here on a straightening board, right, with 2 clubs. 8, 9, 10, you have 8, 8, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, I take a look at it, and then the big blind, and he's a good player himself. He leads out for 50.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So he leads out for 50. And, the times that I would do this, if I was in the big blind's shoes, would be the times where I wouldn't think that you would probably bet like a bluff, right? Like ace king or something like that. And also, too, I wouldn't want to check raise you off of a hand if you were to bet an overpair. So I will many times exploitably lead out into the pre-flop raiser on boards like this multi-way. Usually more value oriented than semi-bluff oriented. So if I were to put myself in your shoes and I thought the big blind player was decent, I would probably call and see what develops, right? Like you've got 16 combos of queen jack that are represented. I don't know how wide. I mean, if he's calling with 6-7 off because he's getting a price, that's another 16 combos, right? And then if he's got some jack 7 suited, he's got a lot of thick value here in terms of combinations with this configuration. So I would probably call here.
Yeah, that's what I thought myself. I kind of ran through it and I said, I didn't mind calling the $50.
Yep.
I really didn't think that the button was going to do anything. I thought he'd get out of the way. Then I thought I could, have position on the big blind the rest of the way.
So you make the call. And did the button fold?
No, the button called.
Okay, button calls too. Okay, so pot's now 210.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
Then the next card was interesting. The next card ended up being the jack of spades.
So it puts a one-liner out there. So it's 8, 9, 10 jack.
Exactly.
Okay. Yep.
And I still have the bottom set.
Right.
So then the big blind checked.
Okay.
So I thought about it, and I ended up checking as well.
Okay. I'm good with that.
And then the button pretty much bet the pot. He threw out $180, $175.
And how much did the button start with in the beginning of the hand?
He had about 800 as well.
Okay. All right, so he bets 175, and then what does the big blind do?
He quickly folds.
All right, so the pot's like 385, right? 385, 175 for you to call. If he does have a straight here, right? If he's got a straight, then you're looking at about 10 outs that you have to hit 10 outs to to beat him, right? So I mean 10. I mean you've got you got like 1 and 4.5. You need about like 3.5 to 1. But I mean it's if he shows you a straight here, then it's just a fold. But there's a couple other things going on. Like if he shows you a straight, it's a fold, but if he's unable to fold when the board pairs, then you have implied odds. And then, if I put myself on the button spot and I had maybe possibly overcalled with a flush draw here, I'm trying to look at this because it's hard for me. A lot of my flush draws are going to be combo draws because I would probably 3-bet off cutoff versus button with, we could maybe have like ace-6 suited, ace-3 of clubs, ace-deuce of clubs. So let's say like I decided to flat those hands on the button versus a cutoff open. If he gets checked to me here on the turn, I'm probably going to start a bluff, to be honest with you. So I don't know that he always has a straight. You say he's a decent player. I've seen guys monkey bet like with Jack 10 sometimes, and they think that, well, I'm just going to bet for protection here too. So I feel like for those reasons, I'm not going to fold here. Like if you check call and the board doesn't pair, and then the river's a brick, and you check again and he bets, well, then you can, make a fold. But you might call, you might not improve to a full house, and it might go check at the end. I think you have the best hand here some of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. When I thought about it for a little bit, and I tried to get some information out of him. I kind of asked him. I said, "Okay, what am I drawing to?"
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of replied back. He's like, "I can't tell you, bud." And I kind of I thought I got a read that he had something, and thinking back, I think I should have called. 95% of the time. But I ended up, and it was the end of the night too, and I was up some money, and I don't know how much that plays into it, So I said, if I call this, then it could ended up playing for stacks. But that was a good point, like you make. If he bets again on the,
you could just check call, check fold, right? So you ended up folding the turn.
Exactly. I ended up holding the turn.
And did you find out what he had?
Yeah, he ended up showing an offsuit ace-10.
An offsuit ace-10. Wow.
Exactly.
So so obviously he's starting a bluff here. That's interesting. Did he have the ace of clubs in his hand? If you remember?
They were two black cards. I want to say he did.
Well, So yeah, he'd have to have well, okay. Well, yeah, because it would be ace 10 suited because
Yeah, 'cause it was
the
a 10 of
10 of
clubs.
clubs is out there.
The 10 of
So
clubs, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I don't hate the play. I'm trying to put myself in his spot. Again, it's kind of the same thing. Like it's like, well, if I'm gonna bluff, if I'm gonna start a bluff with like ace deuce of clubs, ace 6 of clubs, ace 4 of clubs that I didn't 3-bet off, ace 10's not gonna have enough showdown value to win here for the most part, right? Once a jack comes. So I don't hate the play if he has ace of clubs 10 and then he's just gonna bluff across like maybe club rivers. But I mean, I think like I said, what you can take away from this is the guy doesn't always have a straight when he bets here, right on the turn, you know.
correct.
So,
Yeah,
anyways,
that's a great point.
thanks for the call. I appreciate
Bart.
it. All right, now we're gonna do our last hand here, which is my hand, which will definitely go up because this is gonna be the regular podcast either for 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now. I'm actually doing a bunch of podcasts the next 3 to 4 weeks on all my hands here from the bike, but I thought that this one was particularly interesting, and it involved a bad player or a fishy player, which you're going to see this for about a lot at 5-5. But I sort of have to wrap this and give a little bit of history here. I was pretty busy on my phone last night doing work stuff. And obviously that's not necessarily the best approach, but I mean, it's 5-5 and I've got stuff to do. I'm trying to put the hours in for the challenge. But the reason why I say that is because I had just told myself, like, hey, like, I've got this shit I got to do. I'm going to try to play as close to like what you're supposed to play pre-flop here, as like as a tight player would. Like, if it's close, I'm just going to fold. So what ended up happening was that like I didn't play a hand for at least 3 to 4 rounds. I mean, I had a bad distribution of cards too, but maybe like I folded a couple small pairs from up front, which are like, close that I might open if I was actively paying attention in the game. But I was just like, hey, I've got to do this shit. I had to write a correspondence letter. So I was doing this and I was like, so I ended up not playing any hands, literally. And the people at the table didn't really know who I was either. So I felt it just looked like, hey, I look like an extremely tight player. That's what I think it really looked like. No one had talked to me or anything like that. So we get into this hand. And this is quite funny, right? So I haven't played a hand in like 3.5 hours. So I'm under the gun with a 1K stack. And I raise to 20, which is my standard open with queen of spades, 10 of spades. It's standard size open. And just like to be expected, right? When you don't see a guy open or play a hand for, say, an hour, 3.5 orbits, I get 6 people to call me. I haven't played a hand in an hour and a half, and 6 people call me. I'm under the gun, +1 calls. Primary villain here, which is going to be in +2. We'll call him V1 +2. He calls, and I had already sort of seen him. He was definitely a recreational player. Okay, low jack call. I mean, these guys are all recreational players, but this guy especially. Low jack calls, button calls, and both blinds call. So 7 ways. So both blinds call, right? So the pot's like 140, and then whatever the drop is too. 7 ways. I've got queen 10 of spades from under the gun and make it 20. The flop comes out. King of diamonds, jack of spades, 7 of diamonds. So it's king of diamonds, jack of spades, 7 of diamonds. I've got queen 10 of spades. So I flop open-ended here with a backdoor flush draw. Okay? So the blinds check to me. And I'm like, there's no way that this is going to get through with a c-bet here. There's just too many people out here. I mean, this is kind of like what, if you guys play PLO, the continuation betting has to sort of be reined in. I mean, yes, I do have equity, right? Someone's going to hit this board, though. I do have equity, and you're supposed to rein in your c-betting when there's so many cards out there, right? And I sort of had in the back of my mind, like, let's see what happens in this spot. So check, hero checks, +1, who is this like little fidgety guy, he bet 75. So he bet 75. Remember, he had just called me from +1. +2 calls. Okay, the low jack calls, button folds, blinds fold, and it gets back to me. So plus 175, plus 2 calls, low jack calls. So already there's $360 out there in dead money. Now, again, I'm looking at this like I'm a very tight player in this particular spot. And I was like, you know what? I think this is a great spot to sometimes check raise here. The guys in the field, besides the plus one, their ranges are somewhat collapsed. They're not going to be slow playing really like a whole lot. I feel like with a bunch of people behind them in this pot that's already bloated up. Remember, like plus one bets is plus two and low jack are going to call with sets of sevens, king jack, with all these people behind them and the pot's big. I thought it's a perfect spot where those guys don't have strong hands. As long as I can get through plus one here, this is going to be a very, very profitable play for me to take it down right now. The sizing is kind of interesting here, but like I said, there's about 360 in the pot. So I decide to check raise to 400. Here at a 400. So again, check, 75, call, fold, fold, fold. I check raise to 400 with queen 10 of spades. Plus one thinks about it for a while and finally folds. And now plus two, which I was not expecting, kind of snap calls. And the low jack folds. So now we're heads up. And the pot is just a hair under 1,100. I believe it's like 1,090. Okay. So now we're heads up. I've got $600 left in my stack, right? Because I just put in 400 and I started with 1,000. The turn's the 7 of clubs. So it's king of diamonds, jack of spades, 7 of diamonds, 7 of clubs. And now the question is, and I think this is a really kind of a fun spot, what do you do here? What do you do with your hands that are full? Like if, for example, you had played like pocket jacks this way, or you had played king jack this way, and I might play the hands like in this manner. They're both the nuts. If I had king jack suited, jacks, I wouldn't want to play kings this way. I wouldn't want to necessarily drive everybody out, but kings probably wouldn't be played as a check raise in this manner. But what would you do? Or I've had quad sevens or something like that. You know, it's 1,090. We have 600 left. And I immediately went through the options. I'm like, to be honest with you, in a very, very unbalanced way, I certainly would probably come out and bet like $200 with a full house here to get the pot larger. You know, if I bet 200 here into like 1,090 and he makes the call, the pot's going to be like 1,490. We're going to have 400 left. I wouldn't want to let it get checked through. So I would probably bet 200 to 250 here. But what do I want to try to accomplish here? Which is quite interesting. Is just like I want to get the fold. Now, if he had some sort of draw on the board pairs, I was thinking, well, I'm just going to shove and he's just going to fold, right? So in game, almost kind of like as a reflex, I'm like, all right, well, then I'm going to shove here, and this is probably going to get folded through a lot of the time, right? So I just shoved. So hero shoves, and plus two thinks about it for a little bit, and he makes the call. So plus two thinks and calls. River is the deuce of spades, and plus two says, I missed. You got it. And turns over ace of diamonds, 6 of diamonds for ace high. That scoops over a $2,000 pot. And I walked away from this and I was like, well, that's really, really interesting, because was there another way to play this as if I had played as if I had had a full house here? How do fish perceive that people are going to play a full house? How do people at this level, how are they going to play like a full house here? Would it have been better for me to check the turn? Because is a guy with a nut flush draw going to suddenly just blast the turn when I check? It looks like I have a full house. So would it have been better for me to check the turn and then just put in like a double delay at the end when the diamond bricks up? Now, like I said, in game I thought, oh, well, I'll just bet here and I'll get plenty of fold equity when this guy's range is collapsed. He's not really slow playing anything. I'm gonna get a lot of folds here. And obviously he's supposed to fold ace-6 of diamonds, right, on a king-jack 7-7 board when a guy check raises him as the pre-flop raiser who hasn't played a fucking hand in 90 minutes from under the gun in a 7-way pot, right? He's supposed to fold on the flop. Definitely supposed to fold on the turn. But it's such an extreme scenario dealing with like a recreational player. I definitely would bet small with a full house. It gets dangerous though, because if I make it like 250 and he's possibly like holding on with king queen, is he going to fold at the end? Should I have just checked and let it go check, check, and then bet like 300 at the end? Just hope that diamonds break out, he checks back, and I bet like 300, and that would have been it. But here, by shoving, he gets to see the showdown with ace high, and we end up breaking out. I actually think it's very, very interesting. But, if I played at this level a lot, I would have to start to take some of these things into consideration, which is part of the reason why I'm trying to do part of my 5-5 challenge so that I can bring my expertise to a lot of my viewership and subscribers that play at this level, because there are certain things to think about. Like if you check raise with a combo draw, and someone calls you and the board pairs, what's the best way to get them to fold? Is it to bet? What's the sizing? Is it to play it like you're playing a full house and then just bet the river when it goes check, check? Now, obviously, when you have a draw, it's less likely that they have a draw because you have some of the cards. But here, I thought it was quite interesting. And that's going to be a huge, huge swing for me, because instead of winning 1,700, I lost 1,000 in that pot for my challenge here for like the 30 or 40 hours that I'm playing over the next few days. But definitely an interesting one. Anyways, guys, that's going to wrap it up for us this week. We'll be back here, of course, next week, same time. And if you want to submit and be on the show, please do so. Email bart@crushlivepoker.com or hit me up on Discord if you are a CLP subscriber. Watch me on Live on the Bike tomorrow, the Anti-Game, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And we will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.